right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, we are talking about Oxygen, a film that came out a few weeks back on Netflix, but it is definitely something that is worth talking about. And joining me for this conversation is Josh Bell from Awesome Movie Year, which just started its 8th season, this time on the films of 1967. So you should be checking out Awesome Movie Year if you enjoy piecing it together, because I produce that podcast and I'm on that podcast, and you should be listening to that podcast. So check out Awesome Movie Year wherever you listen to podcasts. And while you're at it, make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together as well, so you can find out about all our new upcoming episodes as they come out. We've got a lot of episodes in the pipeline right now, so make sure you're subscribed. You could also rate and review us over on Apple Podcast or on Podchaser. And you can follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. We also have a Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, and the Produced by David Rosen Patreon, where we post bonus content from Piecing It Together, from Awesome Movie Year, from my music career, all kinds of great content over there. It's patreon.com/bydavidrosen. And the more subscribers we get, the more content we're going to start posting on there. So make sure to get signed up. We just posted a bunch of new content centered around a special sign-up bonus week that we were doing. So there's lots of great stuff over there to check out right now, and a lot more on the way soon. So, yeah, I think that about does it. Let's jump into this conversation now and talk about Oxygen. All right, Josh Bell is back with us. We're going to talk about Oxygen. Josh, how's it going?
Oh, it's pretty good. How are you?
I'm great. I'm in the middle of a movie weekend, just one after another, but I haven't been recording a lot of episodes lately, so I'm excited to record one today.
Yeah, and I'm glad we got to this. This movie premiered a little bit ago, and we talked about covering it, and then we kind of got sidetracked or busy or whatever. But I like this movie, and this is one of those movies that I watched it, and I thought, this was pretty good. Mm-hmm. And then the more I thought about it, the more I really was into it, the more I really respected it and admired what it did. And we'll maybe do our little top 10 of the half year soon.
Sure,
and I feel like this is going to end up on my list.
Right on. Yeah, I'm glad we're getting to it too. And, ever since the pandemic, it's like release dates don't mean as much when it comes to podcasts. Content's content, just like Netflix always says. I don't know if they say that, but they might. But, we cover whatever movies we can. And I am glad that we're getting to it and not letting it kind of slip by, because, yeah, it's a worthwhile movie to talk about. And I think a little different from anything we've ever covered on the show. It's unique in a lot of ways. And I like a lot of Alexandre Aja's films. I really liked Crawl a couple years back, and I think he's an interesting director. Was this one that was on your radar, like, before it came out? Like, were you really looking forward to it?
I mean, it was a little bit, but only because I was looking for movies to review, to write about. And actually, it was not on my radar. I was looking through Netflix's list that they send out of movies that they're premiering every month. And I had no idea what it was, and I kind of clicked on it. And a lot of it, if you know from Netflix, that there's so much stuff there.
Oh yeah.
And when you get that list, like the majority of things, it's like, what even is this? And it's not something that I'm going to write about, or it's so niche that no one is really going to read about it. No editor is going to take a review. So I just kind of clicked through everything just to see what it is. And so that was the way I discovered it. I was like, wait a minute, this is Alexandre Aja, this is Melanie, Laurent. This looks like a really interesting film. So at that point, I was kind of eager, but I hadn't known about it before then. Mm-hmm. And I guess it had been in development, and it was going to be, I assume it was going to be an English language film with Anne Hathaway as the star at one point.
Right.
But I hadn't read any of that until I saw that it was about to premiere on Netflix. But then I was excited to see it.
And he came on pretty late into development, I think, right?
Yeah, it was, I forget the guy's name, but another French director who's sort of his protege.
Okay.
Who was originally the director, and I don't know why that guy dropped out, and he came on board. But yeah, he did a great job. Whatever it was, the combination that they ended up with turned out really well, I think.
That director remembered that he's really claustrophobic and was like, I cannot do this project.
I don't know. I'm pretty sure they're not really in a medical pod to make this film. But
probably not.
Yeah.
But all right, let's start getting into some puzzle pieces, and we'll talk plenty more about the movie along the way. What do you got for your first piece?
Well, I might as well start with the obvious one that I feel like everyone has cited in relation to this movie, but it's accurate. which is the Ryan Reynolds film Buried. I think you and Jason mentioned this in your trailer episode to preview this film.
Yep.
And I mean, it is obvious, but at the same time, it's one of those movies. It's weird because it's really not that good, I think, but it's memorable because it really committed to that gimmick.
Right.
And any movie that does anything similar, people always cite this movie because it was the one that really, I mean, I'm sure it wasn't the first movie that had a character, he's buried alive in a wooden coffin, and I don't even remember why or what it is. It's not a sci-fi thing like this movie. He's some criminals or he owes them money or I don't remember, but it really sticks with just him in there using whatever resources. I think he's got a cell phone that it's about to die, and he's got a lighter to be able to see, and you kind of respect it for committing to that, even if I remember correctly, the story didn't turn out to be all that interesting. But certainly you can't make a movie like that without looking back at Buried and kind of trying to take some lessons from it, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, again, that is a movie that I don't really remember anything about except for the concept. But like you said, I think everybody remembers that movie and the concept, and like, oh yeah, Ryan Reynolds was in a movie where he's buried in a casket, and that's a cool concept for a movie, and it's interesting, and I would like to revisit it one day and see if maybe it's all right. I mean, I know it doesn't really have great reviews or anything like that, but it just seems like a good enough concept that it could be fun. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I remember seeing it and reviewing it and not really being into it, and I think the filmmaker hasn't really gone on to much of note. But I mean, of course, Ryan Reynolds is a big deal now, and yeah, maybe. I don't know. I feel like it's more worthwhile for the idea of it and the fact that they pulled it off, than anything else. But maybe it's aged well.
Well, I'm going to start off with a puzzle piece that I didn't even have until just now, but I thought of it while you were describing Buried, and just the fact that Ryan Reynolds is stuck there with these specific resources, and he's got to figure them all out and how to use them all to get out of the situation. And I thought of the Escape Room movie, which is getting a sequel later this year.
Did you see that movie? I never saw it.
I never actually saw it, but I certainly know of it, and I know that it takes the idea of these escape rooms, which are very in right now and very fun. Have you ever done an escape room, Josh?
I did kind of a low rent version of it at Meepleville, the board game cafe that we have here in Vegas, and they set up their own. It was just kind of like in a little back room. It's not as elaborate as some of them, but a friend of mine is really into escape rooms, and so we did it. It was kind of fun.
Okay, yeah, but I did it one time at, I forget the name of the place, here in Vegas over on Sahara. Actually, it was a double date, me and Gina and Chad Clinton Freeman, our mutual friend, and his girlfriend. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. But that movie looks absolutely ridiculous. The sequel looks even more ridiculous. I might actually see the sequel just for how ridiculous it looks. But anyway, the whole concept of escape rooms in general and that film that was born out of them, I think this film kind of feels like an escape room because she is stuck in this place and has to figure out a way out with just these limited resources. She's got to figure out how to use them to figure out what's going on.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I feel like if this was a big studio movie, we could have a oxygen themed escape room somewhere.
Sure, yeah, that would suck.
Yeah, that would talk about being claustrophobic. But yeah, I never saw Escape Room. There was, however, at the time, a sort of weird mini trend of incredibly low budget horror, like lower budget even than that movie, horror movies that themed around escape rooms. And I saw another one, which may have actually also been called Escape Room or something similar. No, it was called Escape Puzzle of Fear.
Ooh.
Which sounds way cooler than
puzzle
it was.
Pieces.
And I think the poster might have had some like puzzle pieces or something. But I reviewed in my VOD column at Crooked Marquee, and it was very, very bad and barely really had anything to do with escape rooms. But of course, it was just like capitalizing on a trend, and it was mainly just some characters wandering through hallways, like every low budget horror movie.
Sure.
But yeah, that sequel does look. If you're going to do something dumb like that, you might as well just go all the way in.
Go
right?
all the way. Absolutely. That's what I always say. Well, Josh, what do you got for your next piece?
Well, I'm going to mention a movie that we already just mentioned briefly, which is Alexandre Aja's Crawl, which I really liked. And I think leading up to that, I feel like he'd been kind of an uneven filmmaker. He started out with this promise as, this sort of French indie horror filmmaker, and then detoured into some dumb remake stuff. I mean, I think like any of these smaller filmmakers, you get a chance to make a Hollywoodish movie with a franchise name or some IP or whatever, and so he made the Hills Have Eyes remake, I think it was, and the Piranha remake, which was kind of amusing. But
I love the Piranha remake.
There you go. Yeah. But I wasn't like, oh, I'm excited for his new film or anything. But Crawl, I think, like this movie, it's obviously a bigger canvas than this, but it's still a very basic, similar single location premise with more or less one main character. I mean, there's sort of two main characters in Crawl, but it's really just Kaya Scodelario's character, and she's got to save her dad, and he's a character, but he's just kind of trapped most of the time. Yeah. It's about her resourcefulness and using what she has at hand to solve this problem and make sure that alligators don't eat her.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, that movie is a lot of fun, and I feel like that in a way is sort of prep for something like this, that you can pare it down even further and you end up with Oxygen.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And it definitely has that kind of tension he's working in again. And I'm just picturing now, there probably is a movie like this, but an alligator on a spaceship. Is that it? You've probably seen that.
If there isn't, it's definitely the kind of movie that I would see and that I would try to write about. I don't know how they would have to have like water on the spaceship, right?
I suppose, yeah.
Or it would be maybe some sort of mutant alligator that no longer needs water.
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
All right.
We'll get there eventually.
Well, I'll go to my next piece here. I'm going to go with the film Searching, and also Unfriended from that same crew. But the whole screen life subgenre, this film here, Oxygen, like we've been saying, takes place in this cryogenic chamber, and everything she has to do is dealing with a computer screen and basically asking it questions the whole time and trying to figure out a way to get it to do what she needs it to do. But the whole time, everything's basically taking place on a screen, 8 inches from her face the whole time. And so while it's a different setup and a different it's not the exact same thing, because it's not the actual screen being put on our TV screen as we're watching. It's from her eyes, it basically is the same kind of setup, because she's seeing just nothing but the screen the whole time. So it makes it feel a lot like these screen life films.
Yeah, that makes sense. And those movies are all about like asking questions. I think, like you said, whether it's in a search query or calling someone or whatever, it's really just about a person in a fixed place trying to use the screen to find out what's going on.
Yeah.
So that makes sense.
Right on. What do you got for your next piece?
Well, we'll get into some spoiler stuff here, I guess.
Sure.
So my next piece is another movie that I did see, but maybe it's not very good, is Passengers.
Sure.
The sci-fi movie with Chris Pratt and Jennifer Lawrence, right? I was like, I saw it, and I remember the concept of it. And of course, that goes to the kind of twist. Although you get a sense of it a little early on in the movie. She's been woken up from this cryogenic state before she's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And the movie doesn't tell you that she's in space until kind of towards the end in the twist. Although that's one of the obvious things that you're expecting.
I thought the same thing. Yeah. I kind of saw that coming a mile away, and I think everybody does.
Right. And so I don't think it's that. And I don't think that's necessarily bad.
Right.
I think it's building to that, and it makes sense. And so Passengers, of course, is also a movie about people in cryogenic pods traveling through space toward a colony who are awoken too early. And it also has the love story aspect that we have here in this movie, even though we don't really see her husband other than in some of those snippets, the brief flashbacks and the stuff on the screen. But there is the sense of them both being in this kind of certainly under these circumstances, and they're falling in love or re-falling in love or whatever. And Passengers also relies on some unfortunate twists that ruined it for many people. But theoretically, I feel like that movie had some interesting ideas that just didn't work out.
Sure, yeah, and it's a difficult like kind of line to ride with these kinds of movies when they're bringing up these big, huge questions, and really you kind of risk alienating anybody who doesn't agree with what the big experiment happening on screen is, and so it definitely is a hard thing, I would think, for any director to kind of pull off.
Yeah, and I think this movie does it pretty well. There are some, I like almost any movie with big twists like that, there are some logical inconsistencies. There was one particular thing that bugged me, but overall, I was still with it.
Mm-hmm.
And in part, I think it's because, and this is a larger thing, I think people are too critical of the idea that you saw a twist coming.
Sure, yeah.
And I think if you saw a twist coming to some degree, it means that they set it up properly, that it makes sense, that the narrative is building to this rather than it just coming out of nowhere.
Sure.
So the fact that you can kind of guess, not that you can guess everything, but that you can think, oh, this might be what's happening, I think is actually a strength of the story.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think it's very true. And you don't want it to come right out of nowhere, because then it's probably doesn't make sense and doesn't work.
Right. And if that's in fact something that Alexandre Aja has done, as much as his early film High Tension was a big kind of cult sensation as this crazy horror movie, but that's one of those movies that has this twist where after the twist, you think back on all the things that happened previously, and you're like, those things could not have happened if this was the case. Yeah. And so I remember being really annoyed at that movie. So this one does it better, I think.
Well, I'm going to go with a puzzle piece that could go along with the screen life things and the same points I was bringing up with that. And this is not a movie, but if we go all the way back to DOS-based text adventures.
Oh,
you remember those, like Zork and things like that?
Yeah, I was not as into those as you were. Clearly.
Yeah, no, those were awesome back in the day, and the idea that she has to ask this computer, what was it called?
Milo?
Milo, yes, yeah. Milo. Yeah, she has to ask Milo the right questions, or else she's just not going to get shit from it. It's going to very glibly just give her nothing unless she asks the question in exactly the right way. And that's how those games used to be. It's like you could sit there all night just typing things that you think are the wording that you're supposed to be saying, but nothing's going to happen unless you ask exactly what the programmer wanted you to ask. And it's really frustrating, as it is for the character in the movie, but that adds to the tension of it all.
Yeah, I think there's a cult following around those games still.
I think so.
People still trade them and stuff, or have emulated versions of them, or whatever it is that you do with video games.
I would imagine so, yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. I'm surprised one of those hasn't been made into a movie yet.
That's actually a really good point, but anything could happen, I guess.
Yes. Everyone needs IP, right?
Yes, that's right. What do you got for your next piece?
So, well, I'll continue with the spoilers here and go with Never Let Me Go, the Mark Romanek film based on Kazuo Ishiguro's novel and written by Alex Garland, who is, I feel like if there's ever any sort of semi-cerebral sci-fi movie that there's an Alex Garland thing is going to have to come up as a puzzle piece.
Sure. Yeah, it seems that way.
So, but I mean, the idea that we learn here late in the film, of course, is that our main character, Liz, as well as everyone else on this giant spaceship, are clones. They, she finally asks how long has she been alive, and the answer is what,
100 minutes or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And so and they're cloned as replacements for people. The idea that they are sort of versions of people who are back on Earth, I think, who are going to go now colonize this new place. And in Never Let Me Go is a little more ominous than that. The clones are being raised for the purpose of organ harvesting.
Right.
But it also has the storyline here of these clones who fall in love with each other, who have this sort of shared connection based on potentially some genetic history that they've been imbued with.
Mm-hmm.
And that movie is much more of a romance. It's much more emotional. And it actually has, it's been a while since I saw it, but it has quite a long stretch of just being what appears to be kind of a romantic drama with some slightly mysterious elements before you learn the full extent of all the sci-fi stuff. But it's really good. It was a concept that is basically the same concept as the Michael Bay movie, The Island.
Right.
But much better as far as I'm concerned, and much more emotionally satisfying, but less action oriented.
I'm sure.
With Carey Mulligan and Keira Knightley and Andrew Garfield. So it's been a long time. I came out 10 years ago, but I remember being really into it. And it's the kind of sci-fi that I like because it's it takes time to build the characters. It's emotionally engaging. But when you get to the sci-fi ideas, they're also really smart and asking you philosophical questions and stuff. So I think Oxygen doesn't maybe devote enough time to fully explore all that. And that's okay. But some similar stuff there.
It is funny that Alex Garland comes up anytime it's like a smart sci-fi movie.
Yes.
But yeah, I actually have never seen Never Let Me Go. I need to watch it one of these days. Great cast, and I mean everyone involved in that. It sounds like something I'd really like.
Yeah, again, it's been a long time, but I remember really liking it when I saw it in theaters. And I think if it wasn't the same year as The Island, it was close enough that it just kept getting compared to that, and that's not doing anyone any favors.
I like The Island, but all right. I'm gonna go to a movie that I haven't seen since it came out and barely remember. I don't really even remember if I liked it that much, but it is the 2002 Joel Schumacher thriller Phone Booth.
Oh yeah, I liked Phone Booth.
Was it good?
Yeah.
Colin Farrell confined in a phone booth, and this threat of being killed if he doesn't follow the orders from this mysterious caller. And I mean, basically, this woman is stuck in this thing and talking to various people and this computer AI. And if she doesn't do everything that's being told to her, she's going to die because she's going to run out of oxygen. And so it just seems like a similar approach to a one location kind of thriller.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I also haven't seen it since it came out, but I remember liking it and it being effective as that, even though the character is just in that single location. And that's a sort of a subset where it's like there's an overt threat. I think someone is pointing a gun at him.
Right, yeah,
and
sniper.
He's got to do that. I think also of the movie Grand Piano
with
Elijah Wood, which is really good and is also insane. And he's got the gun pointed at him and he's like a virtuoso pianist and he has to like play this piano piece perfectly or he'll be murdered. And it's really fun, actually.
I'm writing that down. I'm gonna watch that.
It's really good, and it's I can't remember who the director is, but it's actually written by Damien Chazelle.
Huh.
And it's like, what if Whiplash just really went in and was actually a horror movie?
Wow.
And I don't even really like Whiplash, but I like Grand Piano a lot more. So I wasn't a puzzle piece that I thought of, but it's a really good movie.
That's cool. I'm gonna have to check that out for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what do you got for your next piece?
Oh, okay. Well, we'll go with something I actually put down. My next pick is Gravity, which I think is, kind of an obvious pick for any sort of space peril movie these days. And again, I guess I'm really sort of focusing on the last parts of the movie here. But I feel like there's a lot that he's drawing on with that, when we finally get to the sci-fi parts of it. And there's a great reveal in this movie when, even though the special effects aren't the best, but when she finally is able to realize what's going on and she tells Milo to sort of turn off the screen so she can see what's actually in front of her.
Right.
And you see this sort of carnage of all these other pods that have been destroyed.
Also, one of the best jump scares I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, it is good with the corpse.
With a big fucking hole in its head. Like, Jesus.
Yeah, and this is, I don't know if this quite qualifies as a horror movie, but obviously Alexandre Aja has that horror background, and that's a good horror moment.
Yeah.
But also the idea of like, you travel through space and shit happens, debris shows up, there's asteroids, and you have to be resourceful like Sandra Bullock in Gravity.
Sure.
And be able to use what you have at hand. And that's a lot of what the sort of final act of this movie is her thinking about, okay, what resources are there now that I know where I am, what can I use to keep myself alive? And I think that's a lot of what Gravity is doing as well. And that the calls to Earth, even though we don't realize for half the movie that she's calling from space.
Right.
The idea of reaching out to anyone and, Sandra Bullock in Gravity talking to some random.
Right. Just random people. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Just anyone who will listen to please help them. So even before the twist, I think there's some of that in there as well.
Yeah, I think all of that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, Gravity does, it tends to come up a lot on this show whenever we're talking about these like space survival movies, which are a big thing nowadays. It seems like Netflix has one every 6 months probably.
Or more often. Yeah, I haven't seen Stowaway. But,
yeah, that came out a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and I want to. I've heard good things about it, but I feel like it could have been a puzzle piece here.
It probably could have, yeah. Well, I'll go to a piece that I think just connects to one particular scene, and it's when she, after trying to escape this pod, she realizes she has to plug herself back into it and through this like umbilical cord machine thing, and it's horrifying at, going into his horror background again. But it reminded me in Prometheus of the abortion machine that she has to like put herself in, and it's just this horrifying image of just like self-mutilation to get connected to a machine. Yeah, really scary stuff and really effective.
Yeah, I had Prometheus on my list as well, and
Awesome.
mainly for that reason. And the arm with the needle that comes out and is
Sure.
always trying to jab her
Yeah.
with the like, I forget what they call it. It has the euphemism, but it's the suicide
Yeah.
drug, basically.
That's so funny.
But yeah, I think maybe even in a larger sense, Prometheus about man kind of reaching out beyond itself. And isn't there an aspect with Guy Pearce's character of, Earth is maybe not the best place anymore, and they're trying to find a new home?
I think
like
so.
that.
Yeah.
So there's some more than that.
Yeah, and clones and all that too.
Clones.
So yeah,
Were there clones
it's all
in
in there.
Prometheus?
Well, I mean, technically, Android's kind of a clone, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe no clones.
All right. Whatever.
Well, let's see here. What do you got next?
Well, speaking of clones, my next pick is Moon.
Also on my list.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah.
the Duncan Jones film, which not only has clones as part of its twist, and so that too, where I think that is the specific kind of emotional experience of the character, where the twist when they realize they're a clone and all these sort of authentic emotions that they think that they've been having are maybe not, or have been like programmed into them in some way. So that revelation. And then of course also the helpful sounding but actually not helpful robot.
Yes.
I forget the name of the robot in Moon, but that's voiced by good old Kevin Spacey.
Sure.
So that's not great, but he is. It's a very good performance as a robot.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can't remember what its name is, but it has like a very
Kevin Spacey's like a wrecking ball through so many great movies.
Right. Well, I mean, I think that that's we hopefully can hold on to the greatness of those movies.
Yes.
Even so. But yeah, that robot has like a smiley face that is meant to be reassuring, but of course is actually not.
Sure.
And I think Milo too is like it's a medical bot or something, supposed to be helping you feel better, but
Sure.
it really just wants to kill you.
Yeah.
So there's that aspect as well.
That's great. Yeah. One other aspect? Fantastic score by Clint Mansell and Moon, and here it's Rob, the guy who did the Gretel and Hansel score last year.
Great score. I mean, and especially in a movie like this where, although I think this movie has good cinematography too, that they find a lot of different ways to approach this one tiny little space, but when you can't move around a lot visually, then the score really adds a lot to the film, to the atmosphere of it.
Definitely. Well, I'll get one more piece here, and going back to that computer AI voice, I could go 2001, but I'm not going to. Okay, maybe you will. I don't know. But I'm instead going to go to another video game. I'm going to go with the game Portal. I don't know if you've ever played that before.
Really, you could say that about any video game unless it was like Toe Jam and Earl. And the answer is no, I haven't. Okay, I've heard of it.
Toe Jam and Earl, good pull there.
Yeah.
But yeah, in Portal, there's this computer, AI voice that's like kind of guiding you through the whole way. It's called GLaDOS, and it's the same kind of thing where it's just, like I said, very glib, and it's making your life hell the whole time, and it's acting like it's so helpful and just driving you crazy throughout the game. And very much the way that this AI voice is approached here in Oxygen, and just very funny. I think it was Lethal Injection when you were saying
it is a lethal injection, but I feel like it has some other euphemistic name,
something like that. But but it, like. Yeah, all the little things that it offers and stuff like that is like, so it's an asshole basically, and very much like GLaDOS in the Portal games.
Right. Yeah, it's like a compassionate something,
like that.
And then she's like, is that a lethal injection? And it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I haven't played Portal, but I think, is it being made into a movie? I feel like all of these video games now are.
Portal's been on the possibility list for a long time, and I think a story just came out just recently that it's still supposedly going to happen. So I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
It would be a trippy movie, I'll tell you that much.
Maybe it'll be the first good video game movie.
You're acting like Rampage doesn't exist.
I guess there are some candidates now that have support, but I'm still waiting. I think. Well, I only have one more as well, and to go way back to a 1950s noir film called DOA, which is a movie about it has a great opening of the guy stumbles into the police station and he says he wants to report a murder. Who has been murdered? I have. And you're just like, what? And so the idea there is this guy he's been poisoned and he only has like 24 hours to live and he's got to figure out who has poisoned him and why.
Sure.
So there's all these flashbacks as he's talking to the police, as they try to determine who killed him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think similarly in this movie, I mean, she doesn't end up dead, but she almost will. I mean, and she's essentially in that place where she's counting down to her death.
Yeah.
And even if she's going to die, she's determined to figure out why. Who has put her here? Why is she here? What is going on? Who has killed her?
Yeah.
And at least for a large part of the movie, it seems like maybe it is malicious. Like somebody has put her somewhere in order to make her die. And that turns out not to be the case. But I think there's a lot of that, especially to hook you in at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, whoa, what's, she's going to solve her own murder kind of thing. And so that's always a fun hook. And DOA it was remade in the 90s, I think, with like Dennis Quaid, I want to say. And I've never seen that. It's actually, for some reason, in the public domain. So it's very easy to watch and also to remake, apparently. But it's a classic noir, and I don't know if they were going for a film noir thing here, but it's almost something like that.
I could see that. Yeah. I've never actually seen DOA, but I certainly am aware of the story, and that makes a lot of sense. And I think that's a great puzzle piece to close it out on. I'll do the finished puzzle, and we'll get into some closing thoughts here. We talked about Buried, of course, Escape Room, Crawl, Searching, and the whole screen life genre, Passengers, Zork and DOS Text Adventures, Never Let Me Go, Phone Booth, you told me about Grand Piano, which I need to see, Gravity, Prometheus, Moon, Portal, and DOA. So are there any other things you wanted to get to that we didn't get to while going through these puzzle pieces?
I don't think so. I mean, this is kind of, it's a simple movie in a lot of ways, but effective and good. I don't know if it's done well. It's always hard to tell on Netflix. I don't know if it ever made it into the top 10 or anything like that, but I hope people check it out. Given the mountain of content that there is there, this is one of the better choices, I think, to watch. So
sure. I think it's a solid movie. I think it's hard to carry a movie the whole time, and Melanie Laurent does a great job. It's definitely a worthwhile film to check out. And I think, like I said, I love Piranha. I really like Crawl, so I mean, I think he's an interesting filmmaker.
Yeah, he is. I like Crawl a lot too, and I like this. I think with Crawl, it was like, I don't know, maybe I wasn't into, he seemed promising and I wasn't really into his stuff, but that sort of redeemed him for me. But I never saw Mirrors, I think.
I never saw that one either.
Early horror films, and I did think Piranha was fun. And I remember watching High Tension, and up until the twist,
that's good too.
It was like, wow, this is such a crazy, like out there, extreme horror movie. I'm so into it. And the twist just like ruined that movie for me.
Twists are tough.
It. Yeah. So, but maybe it's, now that if you know the twist, you're not likely to be as angered by it. Maybe there's still a lot to enjoy about that movie.
Yeah. Well, I think that does it for Oxygen. Josh, is there another movie you watched recently you want to recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, I want to recommend a movie called Plan B that is streaming on Hulu recently, as of when this comes out, probably still fairly recently. That I think was weirdly like under-promoted. I don't know why Hulu didn't do more to get the word out. I mean, it's an original Hulu movie that they produced. It wasn't something that they bought, that was a studio cast off or anything like that.
Yeah.
But it's a really, really fun teen comedy. I mean, it's certainly in the vein of Booksmart or Unpregnant, which was another movie that kind of went under the radar last year. That was an HBO Max original. But these two teenage girls, one of whom is kind of nerdy and upstanding, and the other is a bit more rebellious, played by Kuhu Verma and Victoria Morolis, both basically newcomers here. And they just have this great, in the tradition of any of those, whether you talk about Booksmart or Unpregnant or Superbad or Harold and Kumar, and the filmmakers from the Harold and Kumar movies are producers on this. So, certainly they bring some of that. But just that great chemistry. It's funny and raunchy, but it's also serious. I mean, the characters end up going on this road trip to find Plan B, the morning after pill, after Sonny, the Kuhu Verma's character, has had an ill-advised sexual encounter with someone and needs this pill. And so it's dealing with some serious issues. Obviously, it's set in South Dakota, where they go to a pharmacy and the pharmacist is allowed to deny them this pill. But it doesn't just become this big message movie. I mean, it's always focused on the characters, distinctly these particular characters, not just like archetypes or whatever.
Right.
These people, their lives. And it's always funny, even when serious stuff happens. So it's been really well reviewed by people who saw it. So hopefully more people will see it. And if you have Hulu, I mean, it's right there. So watch it.
We're planning on watching it, I think, tonight. Either tonight or tomorrow. I'm very much looking forward to it. Nice. And I found out about it from David Wayne, of all people. He posted about it.
Oh, well, I'm glad someone like that is promoting it.
Yeah.
Because it deserves it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Josh, what's going on Awesome Movie Year?
We are, I think as of this, we are in our 1967 season.
Mm-hmm.
So that's exciting. I'm always, pushing for us to look further back into film history. So this is the furthest back we've covered yet. So lots of iconic films that we're going to be talking about, and just an interesting transitional period in cinema from classic Hollywood to the sort of new Hollywood rebellious phase of the 70s. So, a lot of cool films to talk about in 1967. Check out Awesome Movie Year wherever you listen to podcasts at awesomemovieyear.com.
You're getting good at this.
Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter and Awesome Movie Year on Facebook. Yeah, we happy to have more people listen, hopefully. If you like piecing it together, you'll love Awesome Movie Year.
And hopefully you do like piecing it together if you're listening to this whole thing.
Yeah.
But awesome. Also, tell them where you can find all your other critic work that you're doing.
Oh, yeah, all my stuff. You can check out joshbellhateseverything.com, which is not updated that often. But also Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook. And it's Signal Bleed on Twitter. That's where I post links to all my reviews and things in various places. And if you're in Vegas, you can watch me on the 11 a.m. news on Fridays on KTNV Channel 13.
Awesome. Well, Josh, thanks as always for doing the show, and I look forward to next time.
Yeah, I look forward to it.
Hello, Gerald from Two Peas on a Podcast here. So you're listening to a podcast that you love right now. Chances are I love it too. In the independent podcast community, we all support each other, which is why you're currently hearing this promo. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about my show in the hopes that maybe you'll check it out. I welcome a different co-host each week, usually other podcasters, friends of mine, or random folks from the entertainment industry. Together, we count down our top 5 favorite things for whatever that week's topic is. It's often centered around music, movies, TV, and pop culture. We have over 250 episodes spanning nearly 5 years of programming, so there's bound to be something on our feed that's just for you. We release new episodes of Two Peas every Wednesday. For links to all of our content and to subscribe via your favorite podcast app, just go to our website. It's www.twopeasonapod.com. We can't wait to welcome you to the party.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about Oxygen. Make sure to go check that out. It is available on Netflix right now, and I think something worth watching. So go check it out. And also check out the new season of Awesome Movie Year. Yes, thanks to Josh Bell for being the guest on this episode. And don't forget to check out the new season. It's season 8, the films of 1967. Lots of great episodes coming your way over there, so make sure to subscribe. And while you're at it, make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together as well. We got a lot of episodes on the way, so lots coming soon. So also you can follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. And don't forget about the Produced by David Rosen Patreon. Lots of new content coming to the Patreon soon, so check that out. Thank you, everyone who has been listening to the show. You know, we're about to hit the 50,000 download mark, which is kind of insane. That is just a huge milestone for the show, and obviously couldn't do it if you people weren't all out there listening. You know, sometimes when you do these things, you know, yeah, the conversation is between me and another person, but the rest of everything that goes into piecing it together is just me sitting in this room, putting this thing together. And it's just good to know that people are out there listening. So I definitely thank you all so much for being here with me. And I love doing the show, and I look forward to doing it for a long time to come. So let's close this thing out with a piece of music like I always do. And I feel like every time it's a outer space, spacey kind of movie, I tend to close it with this song, but I'm going to do it again. It's called The Void. It's from my 4th album, A Different Kind of Dream. And it's an awesome outer spacey kind of song, so it fits whenever we're doing one of these kind of movies. So this is The Void. There's a cool music video for it over on my YouTube channel, so go check that out. And check out the album, A Different Kind of Dream, available wherever you listen to music. And enjoy it, and we'll be back with more Piecing It Together coming up real soon.
an All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.